Hi, I'm Alexis Allen, and I would love to see soccer into high school and to be able to cheer my sister on in high school.
Olivia Allen.
My name is Olivia Allen, and I'm in favor of having a soccer program in Mount High School.
Coley Baker. I'm Coley Baker, and I'm here to support soccer. Cameron M.
I'm Cameron Newsom, and I'm here to support soccer.
Marissa Thorson.
My name's Marissa Thorson, and I'm in favor of soccer.
Trisha Wilcox.
Thank you, Board, for listening to us. As a military family, your school makes up a lot of military students. Those students come from all over the world. A lot of them are overseas, and that's the main sport they're playing. It provides a team, it provides leadership, it provides them a sense of hope and stability. They need that coming here. As the new kid, that's the first place they're going to go. That's where they're going to reach out to. Please do not take away their hope.
Jared Carter.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Jared Carter. I've been coaching soccer here at Nob South Youth Sports Association for about 4 years now. And I've seen a lot of kids come and go, and the saddest thing that I've seen is at 8th grade, they all look at each other and say, it's done. It's over. I have nowhere to go. They're not football players, they're not basketball players, they're soccer players. And they're done. They're sports done. They don't want to do anything else. So where do we expect those kids to go in high school? They lose that support group. They break apart, and they have nowhere to go. And it's easy to say, oh, it's a school, they can pick up somewhere else, pick up. These kids playing football, basketball, been doing it for 5, 6 years. They're a group. Now they have 1 season, 2 seasons, put them in those teams. It doesn't work. You don't become part of that team. And that's why I think Nob needs a soccer team. This year alone, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we had 24 players. That's more than enough to support a high school soccer program. That's only 3 grades. And not all the kids got to play this year. The board, Nob Youth Sports Association, canceled the soccer program. We were given a 1 day's notice. In 3 days, we gathered enough to support kindergarten through 8th grade. I don't have the exact numbers, but I think it was somewhere around 60 players in 3 days. We had to turn away players because we had to tell the Warrensburg Parks and Rec, we want 1 team because we don't know what we can get. We had to turn away because we had enough for 2 teams and more, just in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. There's nothing we can do, and that's sad as a coach to turn away players. And I hate that our community turns those players away every year when they go into high school. It's sad. And like someone said earlier, it's military town. You don't see football as you see in America. In Europe, football is soccer. Japan, soccer. Find another country where the military base is going to be at, where football is a prominent sport. It doesn't exist. It's not there. So these kids come in here already in high school. They can't pick up and start playing football. Tell someone who's used their feet their entire life to grab the ball and throw it and catch it. It's not going to happen. So you're taking this entire class of students and just saying, we don't care about you. And anyone that's against us, if they have the willingness to go up here and speak against soccer, I want every single student here that plays soccer and that wants high school team to stand up, and I want that person to look those kids in the eyes. Tell them, I don't want you to have soccer in your future. That's all I got. Thank you.
Tony Morris.
Good evening. I'm looking at the situation with soccer coming to Knob-Noster as a breath of fresh air in a sense, but I think we're kind of following our United States government policy in preparation for this. We're going to bring a sport into this conference that the only town that had this in their conference dropped it. We're going to dump $100,000 onto this without a game plan, without knowing where we're going to play, what teams we're going to play. I don't know about you guys, but I think the current administration situation in our country isn't working. So why would we want to bring it to our hometown without a better laid plan? I would probably say we need to push back this motion and plan out where our kids are going to play, what type of conditions they're going to be in before we try to invest money into it. I don't know about you.
We're finished with public comments. I would like to ask Coach Easterwood perhaps some questions to field some questions from the board. If you could come up and maybe, you know, the group out here can also hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right.
We got a report from you, October, concerning soccer. There was you took a survey of the kids in school, maybe you could expound on this a little bit for your information that you gave us.
As far as the plan
that's laid out, or some of your suggestions.
In regards to the survey itself, or into the packet itself with the numbers, the site plans of where we might be playing, who we might be playing.
And also the results of the survey that you gave the kids.
I don't have the specific numbers in front of me here. Kind of recap real quick of what I went through last month. We identified several sites in which we could play on our facilities. We also identified schools in this area, both Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3 schools from the surrounding areas, all the way from Kansas City to the west, all the way from Jeff City to the east, and down south towards Warsaw and Versailles region. Budget-wise, our first year expenditures, we're looking at estimated cost between $62,000 and $65,000 for implementation. This goes all the way from buses to coaches to jerseys, as well as assistant coaches as well. Soccer goals would need to be purchased approximately $4,000 each. Equipment, we'd be starting from scratch. So equipment, vests, first aid, dues we need to be paid for as well. On the annual budget, we're looking at approximately $45,000 annually to support this. This goes all the way down, detailed specifically from our MSHA fees, which is our governing body, to transportation of buses. A survey was administered as recently as a month and a half ago, and it was directed towards the students currently 7th grade through 11th grade. We asked what their experience levels were. We asked what their interest level was in soccer, and we also asked whether they supported it or not. In the question, total number of students surveyed were 159 boys, 151 girls. total 7th through 11th grades. We did not survey current seniors since this would not affect them. Grade levels are pretty consistent between 57 and 69 per class, answering across the board. On the question, are you in favor of adding soccer as a high school sport? 183 students answered yes, that's approximately 58.8%. 59 answered no, it's approximately 19%, and 69 were undecided. On the second question, how likely are you to participate if soccer is added? 72, approximately 23.2% said they would absolutely not participate. That was 40 males, 32 females. Absolutely will participate for 57 total, 25 males, 32 females said that they would absolutely participate. Likely not. Likely not. 62%, or excuse me, 62 individual responses, approximately 19%, and so they would likely not play. Likely will. 51 total, it's approximately 16%, and then approximately 22% were undecided. Do you believe the addition of soccer will improve our school sports program? 204 responses out of just over 300 said that yes. The impact of soccer was split all the way across the board on opinion, whether it have positive, negative, or will not affect, and undecided. And then we also included pictures of possible places to house the soccer fields throughout the district, including the current football field with field turf, the baseball complex out of 23, and a couple of other additional sites were expanded upon. Any more questions?
Yes. I'd like to see something that says what other sports in our arena need equipment, whether that includes uniforms, whether that includes helmets, and I'm not just talking sports in our arena, I'm talking fine arts as well. What else the school district can do to support the activities that we currently have on board right now? And I know you don't have that this evening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other needs can be identified relatively easy throughout the district, from sports to academics. And that's something that we can put together, and we're actually in the process of putting together, and can be presented as early as the next board meeting.
I might add, a lot of that has already been collected and presented through our Mission 2020 plan. Many stakeholders worked very hard on that all last year. And our District Connect Committee has made a commitment that each year we will revisit what's planned for that year to see if there are any updates or modifications that need to be made. So much time has been spent in that area. We continue those efforts, but we are looking across the board.
That's a good point, Dr. Lawrence.
And I believe that to be true, that people have contributed a lot of time towards, but I feel that there's some areas in our district that have been neglected, and I would like to see some kind of report from, I know you're the coach out there, you're the athletic director, from the fine arts department. I know we recently purchased a kiln for the art room, but there's other areas too, the music, you know. So it's all encompassing, and I think some of the sports probably got left out of the Mission 2020, some of the things that needed to be purchased. And that's what I would like to see as a board member.
Yes, as an athletic director, I can definitely look back at our sports programs and our buildings academically as well, and provide an additional list.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Do we currently have a field that we can play soccer on right now? If we started soccer tomorrow, where would we play that?
The most economical space and user-friendly space would be our current football field. It It fits the qualifications for a minimum varsity level field. We would not be able to host any district or state level games due to its width. We have the length, but the width, we would not be able to host anything. It does fit minimum qualifications to host on it, but there would be something that as I schedule games that I would disclose to other teams and tell them that we're playing on field, but it's not high school regulation, but it does fit the minimum recommended playing field, or what you can use as a soccer field.
I have a question, Mr. Easterwood. And thank you for showing up and thank you for giving the presentation. I, as a board member last year, a year and a half ago when I was elected to the board, I specifically asked for a new wrestling mat after having multiple requests made to me. Could I possibly help make a difference in the wrestling program by helping these folks attain a new wrestling mat? The mats we have, I believe the last time we purchased a mat was probably about 11 years ago. I made that specific request, and to this day, we still do not have a new wrestling mat. Now, I'm absolutely not opposed to soccer, but I do want to make sure that we're taking care of the sports that we do have at this time. Like I said, I asked for a wrestling mat. I talked to the coaches, every one of our coaches at the high school level, and I made a formal request, and today, to this point, it has still been basically denied, in my opinion.
Madam President, point of order. I'd like us to get back on task. We're to be talking soccer update match, so we're still in public comments. So I think we should move back into our agenda line.
Okay. Thank you. In lieu of the information that's been provided for us tonight, the old business soccer planning update, golf planning update will move to next month's agenda.
Well, I mean, are we saying that we're not going to discuss those tonight? They're on the agenda.
Well, I think we have discussed.
Oh, okay. So you're saying like under public comment that we're turning this into our old business and we're kind of redoing the agenda, which is fine. But I just wanted to, I mean, if we're going to talk about it, then if we were to start a program, what does that look like in the first year? I know we talked in the past about JV. Excuse me.
As a matter of order, could we table the agenda items that come prior to wrestling and go ahead and move this agenda item up into the meeting so that we're conducting this procedurally?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
All done?
We'll come back. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Don't go too far.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to table item B under new business, and we're going to move into old business.
Yes.
And talk about soccer and golf. So I need a motion to do that. Motion. Talk about soccer and golf. Okay. Okay. All in favor? Okay. Aye. All in favor?
So,
Well, motion.
just to clarify, there's a motion on the floor to table the grievance regarding policy HH2. Is that correct?
Until after we discuss.
Oh, okay, guys. I understand. I understand now. Thank you.
Sorry.
Aye.
I was going ahead.
Okay, got it.
So now we're going to
So
discuss.
just to clarify, did we get 7 ayes on that? Did we get any ayes on that? Okay.
All in favor?
Aye. Thanks, Dan.
Okay. So now we can talk about soccer and golf.
Thanks, Tricky.
The correct way. So Mr. Eastwood, I guess you can come back up.
Thank you, Coach Eastwood. You don't mind if I start that? So you talked about how a program would look in the first year, that it would be, we talked in the past about it being like a JV type of a squad. We try to schedule some JV games. Is that kind of what we're looking at? We're looking at a male and a female program, a mixed combined program, which would be a male program with females on that team. Is that what are we kind of talking about here as far as the options?
right, yes, those are all, viable options. If we're rolled out, I'd like to roll out 2 separate teams, to give, both teams the opportunity to be competitive, kind of develop. Next year is the first year of a 2-year mission cycle. And so we would be placed into a district, based on area and compete versus similar size school teams. As far as conference scheduling and who we pick, since we're the only team that would offer it on this side of the conference, we could really choose 15 non-conference games. I mean, there's no mandatory scheduling there. So we go out there and of course we try and find opponents that would fit our needs. That may include some JV's teams. We can still play them as well. But we try and schedule varsity games, or I would opt to schedule varsity games whenever possible.
Streeter, what would be the maximum? I heard you say 15. Would that be the maximum number of games that would be played a year, or is it like baseball? You play 400 games.
No, there is a set limit depending on how many tournaments you get into, how many individual games that you can play maximum. And to be honest with you, I do not know that set number off the top of my head, but that's something that I can very easily reference and get to whoever it needs to.
But you also did say that you could adjust that schedule to be comparable to our level of play, so it wouldn't be discouraging the first year or two of the play, right?
I attempt to do our best to schedule like us. When you enter into contracts, they're usually 2-year contracts, home and away. And so some teams would be hesitant to sign a JV contract 1 year, and then it'd almost be near impossible to find, do JV 1 year and then say, our second year of the program, we won't play varsity because that school district has already filled out their varsity maximum number of games. Do you follow me? So what we do is we try and fill out as many varsity games as possible. And if we're still looking for competition, we look for bigger schools, JVs to play where it wouldn't affect their maximum number of games. And we still get quality, we still get competition for us. We get real game experience.
What would be the latest date possible to be able to get that scheduling done?
When the fall season's over, boys soccer is already over. So just as ADs around the Missouri, around the United States who offer soccer, they're doing scheduling as we speak. There's contracts being sent, just like our football schedule is done for next year. Contracts are in place, teams are done. Softball, same way. And so there are still some loose ends out there. There's teams that have not filled their schedules. So, you know, I say the latest to make me feel comfortable about finding quality opponents, and the later we wait, the least likely people's schedules fill up. And so those opponents, you're kind of left with what's left the later we wait. So I'd say anything after January, I would start to feel uncomfortable about finding what we need for our needs. You know, can we find games after January? Yes. But are those games going to be bigger schools in the city? Quite possibly. I don't think that would best fit our needs.
It was also mentioned by Mr. Morris about there was a team locally, which we all know about pretty much, that had only played, I think, for 1 year, and they shut their program down. Is that correct? Was it 1 year?
I'm not quite exactly sure. I know at least 2 years. I'm pretty sure minimum 2 years.
Do we know why that happened?
I cannot, I'm not the expert on that. I cannot speak to that. I believe the program that he was referring to was Holden's program, but I was not on the inside of that.
Thank you.
No, I don't have another question, but I mean, do we see a financial reason why it would not work? Do we see a participation reason? I mean, I know we're talking about fall sports, we're talking about football, we're talking about football versus soccer for some kids making a determination there. That's really I think the biggest issue is whether we would kill our football program by doing this. Do you think that would kill it, or do you think we'd be able to have two programs going?
On the survey, one of the questions that what sports do you currently play in? And of that, I sat down with the current head football coach, Coach Will Graham, and we identified current high school football players who play. And without being precise on those figures in front of me, I believe we counted around 6 current football players who were on the roster who showed interest and said that they would play soccer if soccer presented itself. Now, that being said, there were several other ones at the 7th and 8th grade level as well, but I have not had a chance to talk to Coach Binkley and talked about impact of what that would do to the high school numbers once they reach there.
And just to clarify, how many kids do you know, approximately how many we had out for football this year?
I believe we ended the year-end roster on the high school team with approximately 35, 36.
Yeah, coaches back there, he's hanging out.
Give or take, I'm in the ballpark there.
36, thank you. Yeah, you're right in the ballpark. Well, you kind of spoke to the scheduling concern. We don't have a monetary concern. I don't see why we can't make this happen. So I'm going to move that we put soccer on the schedule for next year.
I'll second.
I'd like to say something. I was the one that started this soccer, and I would really like to tell everybody why. Our school hosts over 60% of the military, and fine military it is. We are leaving these kids out by not providing them something that they are used to as they grow up. We have over 50% reserve. If we don't spend this money, we're going to take the money. So I think with over 60% of our kids being military, and if it's 100,000, okay. I think at over 50% reserve, I don't think the 100,000 is a problem. I think that we should invest in these kids and bring something that they're accustomed to and used to. And 2 years, we can give it a try. I do not see the problem with 2 years of giving it a try. And
I would like to see the board hold off on a vote until we get the monetary money that other sports and the music, fine arts we need, and then we can make an informed decision.
Excuse me? I don't see how that decision either way could make a decision. I mean, we're talking about whether we're going to have a program or we're not going to have a program, not necessarily whether we're not supporting our other programs or not, supporting other programs. I think with the like you talked about, the amount of reserves we have, we put on the books $2.3 million last year. It was reported to us that we saved. I mean, that's money that our district now has in the bank account. So I think that if there are some things issues, I'd like to wrestling that, those kind of things that if we feel that the athletic department needs to have those things, then I think that we have the ability to do so. We're going to have to make some decisions. But we're talking about a sport that is definitely going to be viable. It sounds like to me. From everything we've asked, we said this sport is going to be something that would be a viable enterprise for us to happen. We're going to have a team. We're not going to just spend this money and not have a team. And so I just think that, at this point, it's time to get it done.
On the Kelly's discussion and Matt's, 60% reserves, we're talking $8 million sitting in reserves. $100,000, $60,000, $120,000 in the next 2 years. It's not going to break our reserve bank. We have a Mission 2020 plan that was vetted through various communities last year's school year. It's a living document. It's not in concrete. So as stuff comes up with the new AD or whatever the case is, stuff can be modified. If there's an athletic department that needs help and needs to get on Mission 2020, they modify Mission 2020 for the next year. I just don't think we can really afford to kick this down the road more because schedules are being built. And if we wait too long, we're not going to get down the road.
But we have to work positive that field will work for us.
Yes, our head maintenance man, Mr. Lang, went out there and measured it out, did a really good job, doing a lot of groundwork, and it will work as a minimum facility.
Okay, and I know we had a little discussion last time on the goalposts. What was the outcome of that?
We found goals, we've identified goals online. They're called quick goals. We kind of briefly mentioned them last time, but we went back and double checked them. They will slide underneath the uprights, so the football uprights would not be removed and for contest.
Okay, and what about the wear rate on the field? And is the depth of the field, the depth of the turf, is it comparable with playing, a quality soccer game?
That's outside my expertise. However, the turf guy did come in and said that it's held up well for being in 7 or 8 years. Some more fill was placed in certain high level areas. I think I put in there, but I have no concerns for myself, but I am no expert on the means.
Well, on the depth of the actual turf, do you know if it is absolutely comparable with playing soccer on?
I cannot speak for 100% on that. I don't know. I can walk out across it and it feels fine to me, but like I said, I am no expert by any means, so I'm not going to stick my head up on that one.
Well, could you make sure that it is?
Yes.
But see, that would be my only concern. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't do this program, other than if all of a sudden we find out that the depth of that turf is not comparable for playing soccer on. Because it may be fine for football because of the cleats or spikes or whatever, but I don't know. Do you wear spikes? Well, I'm not saying it's not harder. I'm concerned about the depth of the turf. Is that something we could find out for sure to make sure that could be played on that turf?
Yes, that's something we look into.
Okay.
No.
I would just say, if we don't find that field is gonna work, do we have another field that we could potentially use?
Yes, other facilities were identified last month.
It may have to be built.
Probably be more cost.
Yes, the most cost-effective secondary field would be the practice baseball fields, outfield / infield area.
But do they have to be built? Or are they functional?
They'd have to be chalked or painted. More field prep would have to go into it, but we're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to prep that field. We're not moving trees or putting in new restroom facilities or scoreboards or anything along those lines.
With our football field, are there other schools out there that play soccer on their football fields? Are you aware of that, Mr. Easterwood?
Yes, to their dimensions. Each soccer field's different, football field's different. We've seen Odessa's, Oak Grove's field. Their field's actually 100 yards, 300 feet in length. So they can't host either. There are other schools like Sedalia just built a brand new, beautiful facility that's 70 yards wide and in total compliance. So depending on when it was built, who it was built for, what specifications, yes.
Are any of those fields turf?
Yes, those two I mentioned were turf.
Are they of the same quality turf that we have?
They are newer. They were put in before ours, I believe. Sebelius was for sure. Oak Grove might be same age or older, but comparable.
Comparable as in depth?
I can't speak to that.
Is there any further discussion on this?
Do we have any other concerns from any coaches at all? Nothing, they're great with it?
Well, no, I think, talking with my coaches, I think there's several concerns. I think of the equity piece, and where this money's coming from is some of their concerns. I know since the economic downturn and hardships of, kind of that 2009, 2010 years, things have been frozen for some of them, zero budget on other things. So coaches have learned to get by with what they have, but they've gotten by for several times. So I think talking with some of the coaches, there are needs in their programs that they might not have felt were big enough to get on a 2020 plan or something, but it's definitely needs that have built through the years and they want addressed as well. And of course,
before we add something new, correct?
Yes, that's my feelings from them. And also coaches also feel kind of, we're going on uncharted territories. There's uncertainty. With a school of 328 kids at the high school, there's X amount of athletes out there. And so there are concerns about, are we splitting our athletes as well?
Is your schedule got a conflict with football? Where you going? All of our, how's that gonna work? What's our schedule look like as far as football, soccer, or where are we at there? What are you gonna use? Is it considered falls?
Yes, boys soccer in the fall, girls soccer in the spring. We'd make it work. We wouldn't schedule soccer games when we have a home JV football game. We just find schools that are compatible and we'd make it work. Blue Springs plays 2 or 3 sports or plays soccer and everything else on their field. Surely we can too, if it need be.
Are they turfed?
They are turfed too as well.
Once again, let's go back to my question.
Yeah.
Do you know what the depth of the turf is?
I do not know the depth of the turf.
And from what I can find on the internet, they're the same fields.
Is it?
There's nothing saying one's gonna be 4 inches deep, one's 3 inches deep.
Cause see, that would be my concern, that if football turf is deeper than soccer. I don't know. That's what I'm trying to find out. Cause I don't wanna say yes, and then we don't play on the field that we have to put a new, turf on or whatever right off the bat. That would be my only concern. I supported the program, but I just want to make sure that we have everything in place and the right answers before we do this. I don't have any problem with saying yes, but I just want to make sure everything is in place. So we don't go, that's a big snag though. And we just need to make sure these things qualify before we say yes, because if it isn't, then we have to come up with a field, because now we have a schedule, we have everything in place. Like I said, I am 100% in agreeing that we should do this program, but we need to make sure everything is perfect for doing it.
I would just like to remind the public that you had an opportunity to speak, and the board is discussing this issue. And we gave everybody a chance to sign up so they could speak, and now we're discussing it and to see which way we would like to go.
I'd like to just reiterate what we spoke, I think, last month regarding the turf, and I think this is where member from Dilly is coming from on that concern. Earlier in the year, we had a turf manufacturer installer come out and look at the field to basically assess what's our life expectancy. We've been in for 8 years. Where is this going to go? And right now, obviously, we have wear and tear with our varsity sports as well as some of the youth programs, and we're looking at adding 2 other significant major sports onto this field. So what came out of that evaluation is we're definitely due in the next several years to replace that turf. We all know that. We also have in the plan replacement of the track and the grandstands. But what we can do at this time is add more rubber infill to the field. What that does is it stands up the filaments and it extends the life expectancy of that field. On the west end, where most of the traffic is on and off of the field, that end of the field is getting worn pretty well. On the east end, it's much better. But if we do this, I think it would be a wise move for the district to go and invest in some additional infill, stand that filament up, extend the life expectancy to handle the additional wear and tear, and use that as a stopgap until such time that the district has a comprehensive facility plan in place that would address the replacement of that field when needed. So for those that weren't here, that's probably why we're getting so many questions, because that was discussed.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from the board? All right, we have a motion. It's been seconded. I'd like to do a roll call vote on this. So we'll start with Matt.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
But congratulations, we got soccer. Golf is next. So, Coach?
Well, as much painstaking work that we put in that last decision, I think golf is really kind of a no-brainer. It's a program that we had 2 years ago. It is it's very easy to get into matches. It's not like it's a head-to-head competition. We can get in with 3, 4, 5 other schools, and it's just a matter of them teeing off. Cost-wise, we're looking at around $10,000 per year. We already have bags. The players provide their own clubs or sticks, as they're called. And we're simply paying for a coach, transportation, and green fees for our local Royal Oaks golf course.
Have we had any viability study? I mean, any asking to see how many kids we have, that kind of thing?
Yes, nothing to the elaboracy of the soccer program, but we have approximately between 8 and 10 male and females, and it was a co-ed team when we last had it that said that they were interested in playing.
Do we have any type of memorandum of understanding with the base golf course that we could use that as our home turf?
I have not touched base with them, but 2 years ago that was our home turf. I can't speak to the figures. I want to say it's approximately $1,500, give or take a little bit, is what they charged us for green fees, range balls, and use of their course for home meets as well, or matches.
That's for the entire team.
For the entire team.
Yeah, not per kid.
And the athletic director.
And to reiterate, to reiterate back up on the last board meeting we had, you instructed us that we already owned all the equipment.
Yes, we own the golf bags are in place. The kids provide their own clubs. Polos were given out. I will have to go back and look and see, but of course the cost of 10 polos for the kids to play in is relatively inexpensive in the whole scheme of things. That would be the equivalent to a uniform. I would assume they are back there as well. Umbrellas, we're still back in the storage shed. The inventory would need to be checked to see exactly what there is, but even with zero inventory, the overhead is relatively low.
Why was that program discontinued?
I can't speak exactly to that. I do know we had a retirement of the coach. And I don't know if financially speaking, or I don't want to speculate, but I know there's retirement of the coach and it wasn't picked up afterwards.
Well, I'd like to say thank you to the folks at Whiteman in the past for helping out our golf team, and we can make that happen again. We certainly would appreciate it.
I'd like to make a motion to start golf next year.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion on golf?
The only discussion I have is I'm sure that will happen, but can we make sure that is that something that we can make sure that we have as a memorandum of understanding that facility? Say yes.
That is an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Can we clarify next year, please?
It would be for.
I didn't say next year.
Yeah, you did. 2016.
Oh, yeah, the next school year.
17?
16.
2000 spring, yes. Oh, yeah, they need to play in spring. This spring, next spring.
17.
Are we ready to go this spring? Yeah, so next spring. Next spring.
Just want to make sure.
So it'd be 2000, it would be 2017.
Right.
Okay, and soccer would be fall of 2016.
Correct.
Okay.
The goal for next year, yeah.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Aye. We have, congratulations, we have golf. Is there opposed? I'm sorry. There's one opposed.
Yes.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight for the soccer and the golf. Appreciate your input, and we'll get these programs started as soon as we can. And, Coach, I'd still like to see some kind of write-up on the other needs in the district for sports and for fine arts.
Our coach is already working on it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Coach. Man, I'm gonna move that we make a 5-minute recess.
Okay, we're gonna have a 5-minute recess. Okay, I think we took a 5-minute break. I'd like to get back and continue with our agenda items this evening. If I can have all the board members back up here. Ms. Davis. Mr. Birchie. Okay. So we're going to continue with the board meeting. So please take your conversations and keep them down to a minimum so that we can hear everybody that's going to talk next. Thank you very much. The next item is the new business is B, grievance, and I believe that Dr. Wheeler has.
So in my capacity as compliance officer, I wanted to open up this agenda item with a script that we'll share for all in attendance tonight, just some general parameters of our policy. At this time, the Knob-Noster Board of Education will hold a public hearing for an employee grievance. The grievance was heard at the administrative level and was appealed to the board level. The following requirements regarding the grievance process are included in board policy GBM. Grievance processing is viewed as a positive and constructive effort to establish the facts upon which a grievance is based and to accurately implement board policies, regulations, or collective bargaining agreements. The board strictly prohibits discrimination or retaliation against an employee for filing a grievance and directs all district employees to cooperate in the grievance process. Once a decision is rendered under this grievance process, the decision is final. Grievance decisions cannot be the subject of a new grievance. Because the point of a grievance is to provide resolution outside the court system, an employee is not entitled to bring an attorney to grievance proceedings. Once an attorney becomes involved in the process, the superintendent or designee will refer the matter to the district's private attorney and the grievance process will end. If an attorney is present for the board hearing, the board may decide to discontinue the hearing at this time. Following the hearing, the grievance will receive a written response or report regarding their grievance, but the grievance and persons investigated in the course of the grievance are not entitled to view or receive copies of the investigation file or notes taken during the investigation unless required by law. If the employee is disciplined as a result of the grievance, the discipline may be recorded in the employee's personnel file and discussed with the employee. Information recorded in an employee's personnel file will not be shared except as provided in board policy or required by law. Board policy GBM is silent as to when the board must make its decision regarding the grievance and when it must transfer notice of that decision to the parties. The board may take its decision in this meeting, the board may make its decision in this meeting, or it may render its decision once it concludes its consideration of the appeal. The board intends to provide its decision to the grievance and to the superintendent within a 10-day period from the date in which the hearing is conducted. The language of the written finding will indicate one of two outcomes. One, the board is upholding the findings of the administrative level investigation and believes it is more likely than not that policy HH2 was implemented without violation. Or two, the board is not upholding the findings of the administrative level investigation and believes it is more likely than not that policy HH2 was violated and that the employee representation election will be postponed until such time that the board revises or adopts new policy language which adequately addresses the questions which were raised through the grievance. Specifically, the grievance to be heard this evening was filed by 2 employees. However, the grievance was filed jointly and was identical, and therefore it will be heard at the same time, and findings will apply congruently to both grievances. This hearing is occurring in open session and is therefore open to the public, all public, since it does not arguably fit well within one of the Missouri Sunshine Law exceptions for closure. I'm going to go off script here for a minute and say that we do have legal counsel present here for MSTA tonight, but it is a public meeting, and because this meeting is being held publicly and that legal counsel will not be involved in the conversation, then my understanding is that it's appropriate to proceed this evening. However, the board may choose, again, of the two choices, you can consider which choice you make here in public session tonight. A copy of the grievance and a copy of the findings of the administrative level investigation was provided to the board for review prior to this meeting. Additionally, a copy of each was provided to each member this evening. During this grievance hearing, the grievance will be expected to share information related to the grievance for the board to consider. The board may ask questions during the grievance, but is not required to do so. And as a follow-up to our previous discussion, we want to ask the employees that they address the board directly tonight, and just remind everyone that the visitors in the audience are here for to spectate only. And at this time, I'll turn it over to President Matthews.
At this time, I'd like to welcome Ms. Neva Allen and Ms. Rebecca Ferris-Forrest to the podium to present their grievance to the board.
Hi, my name is Becky Forrest. I want to thank you for this opportunity to address the board. Both Neva and I have been past presidents of NAT. I was president when collective bargaining was passed. At that time, NAT did our very best to ensure that board policy was followed to the letter. Grievance issues. Number one, the petition is an attempt to circumvent the board's policy HA, which authorize a bargaining process should it be desired by the professionals. Number two, the petition violates board policy HH2 because it fails to comply with the requirements of that section by failing to name the union seeking recognition. Number three, the district circumvented board policy HH2 by failing to allow KNMSTA to participate in the identification of a person acceptable to it as dictated by the section titled Changing Representation. At this time, I'll turn it over to Neva.
We handed out talking points because just to be sure that we can stay on track and don't forget some of this as we go. On point two, I would like to point out that even though one of the reasons we do want to have an attorney, at least in the room, is that our district attorney has been involved in collective bargaining and disagreements from day one. And so the first person we met when we went to the collective bargaining table was the district attorney. So he was there and has continued to be there through this entire grievance. In fact, when we asked that it be considered, when Dr. Wheeler had asked that this grievance be looked at outside of the district, they defaulted to have that looked at within the district's own company. So the district attorney is the one that has given you advice, has led this board from day one on collective bargaining. And personal opinion is that he has not followed the good faith bargaining that you all intended and communicated in that policy. So HA gives us the right to do it, and it voted that we would bargain in good faith. And every step of the way we've been pushed back and tried to be, even though when we tried to make it congenial to the board, congenial to the district, we continue to get pushed back. But so he was asked, or his co-attorney, I guess is what you would call Emily, was the one that did the investigation. And she actually, when she came back to it, agreed that they had failed to meet the 3 standards that must be met in H2A. And she skipped the point that said the bargaining unit for which representation change is sought. So even though she said that she agreed with policy, or with, that she agreed that they had followed the policy, she failed to mention the fact that they did not identify a bargaining unit. So the failures of the petition. The language in H2 says that if you are going to change representation, you must, not might or could, but you must identify 3 different things. 1, the bargaining unit for which representation is sought. 2, the union and the union seeking recognition, and the name and addresses of the union's contact person. On that petition, the only person's name was Miss Amanda Wesley. It was her name and address. She does not represent a union, and no union was named, and that's a requirement of that policy. It also says that if an election is, once the ballot is signed by the 30 members, that you have to select an individual to verify those signatures. Any union that's involved in that policy is required to be a part of that decision. We weren't invited. We've never been involved in any of the selection process. So it fails to meet both 2 and 3. I don't know why all of a sudden I went very dry mouth, but I was going to do the right. If I spell it on kitchen paper, I'll be happy. That hasn't happened in a long time. Okay, so we talked about the fact that Mrs. Wesley is not a union in herself, and therefore, even though her name was a contact person, she doesn't meet the requirements of 2. I'm going to turn to the last page. And I think this is where we kind of get to the whole crutch then. And that is the failure for the administration to follow the existing board policy. The decision that was drafted by the district attorney admits that we failed to meet the requirements of board policy under HH2. So in order to reach the conclusion that the actions of the administration does not violate board policy H2, the district attorney writes that Dr. Lorenz has the authority to make additional rules governing the election process. The decision overlooks the distinction between rules of procedure and actual board policy. So when you're talking about she has the right to make additional rules governing the election process, those are rules of procedure. That allows you to set up times for voting. That allows you to set up locations of voting. That doesn't allow you to change the essence of the policy. So the substance of the policy does not have a decertification clause in it. But in doing that action, she is changing the policy that you approved and that you've agreed to uphold. And the statement where she has a right to change rules does not give her blanket right to change anything else within that policy. So you have the policy outlined, and the petition did not meet 1, 2, or 3. And she cannot change and add decertification as a portion of that without you changing it as policy. So in doing so, if in fact you allow Dr. Lorenz to circumvent the board by making new board policy under the guise of rules for an election, it is not only underwriting the spirit of policy HH, where you would be supportive of collective bargaining and bargaining in good faith, but you're also exposing the district to a legal challenge for violating a teacher's due process rights. You know, guys, it's hard to come up and go almost against what could be perceived as against some of the other teachers. That's hard. It's hard to go against Dr. Lorenz. And it's hard to go against you guys. But I have been involved in the negotiation process in this district for 18 years, 12 years as a teacher, and 6 years sitting in your seat. I've never seen the negotiation team do anything that was out of disregard for the teachers in this entire district. We've worked hard to represent them, and we've done everything in our capacity to work with you. When we found that collective bargaining was not, the procedure needed tweaked, so it would line up with our procedures, we brought you the policy. We made recommendations for changes so that it would align with our district goals. And my question is, who told you no? Who told you it wasn't right to work together? I don't think it's policy that's at fault. I think we have outside voices involved that are directing us or directing you as a board that collective bargaining is bad, that it cannot work in this district, and we've done everything we can in our power to make it work. I know that it is your desire to make a policy that is right. If we go forward with this at this point in time and a vote, I don't think we're not going there. That doesn't leave us open to go and rewrite policy that is right or what you would like to see happen. I really respect Dr. Wesley's, he just got a promotion. I really respect her wish to go back to the way it was. Dr. Lorenz came and made a presentation to that of what it would look like if in fact we went back to the way it was. And I can promise you in the 18 years that I've dealt with negotiations, it was nothing in line what she's wanting to implement. It looked nothing like the way it was. When Nat was able to bring presentations to the board, talk to the superintendent, make recommendations. So our request is that you hold to the policy and you hold Dr. Lorenz accountable to the policy as well. You are here to implement the policy you wrote or approved or inherited. If you would like to change it, do so. But don't put it on Dr. Lorenz's shoulders that she can do it as rules of procedure or rules of a process. Not only is it a misinterpretation of law, it doesn't hold with the essence of the policy. We're open for questions.
So I guess I'll start. So the fact that collective bargaining is something that we have a policy about. It came about because of the Independence court case, or the Independence NEA, and they sued Independence School District and said they were going to have collective bargaining. They had some collective bargaining, and the administration said, we're not going to follow whatever they agreed to. And the Supreme Court said and read into the language of the Constitution that it's from 1945. It was that public employees could have the right to collectively bargain, and that was something that had been carved out because they don't want teachers walking off the line. They don't want them walking out of the classrooms, and so now really the basis of the entire policy is based upon trying to find an acceptable way to implement what the court has said is now something that it has to happen in Missouri. And that's as of 2007 when they handed down this court case. My question is that do you feel that there is I don't know if it's really a feeling, but in what we're looking at here with this court case is that there is a right to collective bargaining, meaning there's a right to unionize and to use that as a collective bargaining process. Do you feel that there's a right to decertify? Does an individual teacher have the right to decertify?
If in fact it's in the policy, it can. But in looking at my understanding on collective bargaining is that if it hasn't been addressed at the collective bargaining level, then you have to default to labor law. Labor law allows for decertification, but it also allows for decertification after 3 years that a union's been involved. And so the point being is that if you're going to add something like decertification to the policy, think it all the way through. Think about, if you decertify, when are you going to allow it? How are you going to allow it? When are you going to allow it to be revoted? So whether or not I believe in collective bargaining or not, we were forced or felt forced, and over 90% of the teachers voted for collective bargaining because we'd lost our voice in this district. So if it's necessary to have collective bargaining in order to ensure that we're able to formulate opinions and come to you as a unit and negotiate our salaries and working conditions, and if we have to put it under collective bargaining, we'll call it whatever you want. But unfortunately, that's the only title we have right now. So we have that on the books, and you inherited those policies. Is decertification all right? Yes, but please do your research and change your policy. But that line in your policy does not automatically give Dr. Lorenz the right to change the voting. That is not part of the voting process. We're talking about now substance of the entire policy. The only one that can change that are the members sitting here.
So if decertification is a right, then how would you propose that we uphold that right? How would
I propose you change your policy.
Okay. And I can understand, I can really understand changing the policy. The thing is that you can't have a point in time in which they did not have that right, and then we can read that right into the policy by changing the policy. They had that right before we make any changes to policy. They would have that right beforehand, and I think that's what Mrs. Wesley is trying to express. I mean, I'm not Mrs. Wesley, but she was trying to express her right to decertify. And you spoke to the 3-year.
Well, actually, when she made mention in the petition, she said, if you sign the petition, you're not signing to decertify. So I'm questioning whether or not she does understand that. So in this particular instance, it would truly, in fact, be decertification. So if we're going, I don't mind addressing decertification, and I think we very much have that right. But I think we need to put it in policy and make it a formal policy. I mean, we're on an age of accountability. We have to, I want to know when I get up in the morning, what are the rules I'm going to play by? And if we find they need to be changed, please change them and I'll play by them. But I'm not going to go play my rules and then ask for forgiveness.
And I definitely can understand, if there would have been no policy whatsoever guiding what would happen, that decertification would be a problem because we wouldn't know how to at all go about it. The thing is that we do have some guiding, some policy inside the policy when it talks about recognizing another union, that
they didn't recognize another union.
I understand that. But in recognizing another union, there was a process that had to be followed.
True.
And that process was going about getting signatures on a petition from 30%, a minimum of 30% of their coworkers that were inside of the collective bargaining unit to recognize another union. And that process follows when you look at the State Board of Mediation, which does not have, they don't have the ability to step into a teacher negotiation environment. But the State Board of Mediation for other public employees, they have a process for decertification that mimics what's in the policy for changing a representation. 30% of the teachers will sign a petition, and then once that's happened, then an election is pretty much automatic as long as that those signatures are upheld. And so my issue is that I agree with you that the policy lacks. I really do. But I don't feel that I can deny the right of 30% of our teachers who signed a petition to have their voice at least registered. Not to say that we're going to get rid of collective bargaining. And honestly, if we continue with collective bargaining, absolutely, we're going to definitely continue in good faith. But we have to let that be the teacher's decision, and to have that vote, so that we know, and you know, that that's the way we're going to go forward. And so, I mean, I know that you're talking about the policy, the language structure of whether Dr. Lorenz can make that rule, and it would go back to Emily's, which is our lawyer's interpretation, is that if there's not a specific policy on the books, that section allows our superintendent to make rules concerning this process. And I know it's a point of disagreement there between you and the lawyer. My question would be is that if we had any other process, if you wanted to have your students be able to start a for-profit business and there wasn't any process of policy on the books, you would go to your principal and say, I want to do this. Your principal would probably go to the superintendent and say, we want to do this. The principal would probably call the lawyer and say, can we do this? But if it was something that needed to happen, then we would make a way to make it happen. And so in this case, we have an employee that has expressed their right to decertify, and I don't know that I can bridge that right to at least have an election, to have that conversation so that teachers can register their opinion.
I think the example of the student is probably, I think that the principal and the superintendent have the right to make that move. I don't think that's something that's dictated in policy. So I don't know that has the same analogy.
I'm saying that the decertification is not dictated in policy. It's absent from our policy. It should be in there. I think we would agree with that. It should be in there because it's a right that a teacher has, but it's not. But in the absence of a specific policy, then we would find a way to get it done, and we would find a way to do it within current policy if it was something that needed to happen.
Then change your policy. Change your policy, bring it back. Let's run petitions and have a vote. But put it in intentionally and put it in with rules and research. So I'm not opposed to a vote. I'm opposed to a vote if in fact it's allowed under the policy. I am opposed to us changing the policy at will. Nobody's being hurt right now.
Well, I guess what I'd like to speak on is the fact that we're talking about 30%. And I don't know how it came about that Mrs. Wesley took it upon herself to gather these signatures. The issue I have is we're still talking about the other majority, which is 70% of the teachers that we have to be concerned about. Now, I can look around this room and I can guess, well, I can ask, how many teachers are in support of Mrs. Forrest and Miss Allen that showed up here as a dumbass? We can't go dumbass. Well, I'm guessing it's a larger number because I don't see any representation for the other people and nobody has said anything to me. So, we still have 70% of the teachers we need to worry about.
Are there any other questions at this time? Okay. At this time, are there any final comments from?
We just ask you to support the policies. That's all we can do. We run by those, and please don't put it on a slippery slope that the superintendent, that's why we were here. That's why we ended up here, was the superintendent that decided to take away those rights and to stop listening to us because they thought that that was in policy, that the superintendent only heard and did not have to, they had to seek and confirm, but they didn't have to apply anything they heard. And that's one of the very first policies, and you're in all of the board policies. So that's why we're here to begin with. We'll play by the rules. Tell us what the rules are, and then please uphold them. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Mrs. Allen and Mrs. Harris Forrest for your comments. At this time, the hearing is concluded. As a reminder, board policy GBM provides the following guidance. The board may make its decision in this meeting, or the board may render its decision once it's concluded its consideration of the appeal, or the board policy does not provide a timeline regarding the decision. However, the board intends to provide its decision to the grievance and to the superintendent within a 10-day period from the day in which the hearing is conducted. At this time, I would ask for direction from the board as to whether we provide a response now or at a later date. If the board chooses to wait on making the decision, the board can move to the next item on the agenda.
I'm going to move that we uphold the findings of the administrative level 3 grievance regarding policy HH2.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Do you want to have discussion first?
Oh, I thought we did discuss it.
Oh, I mean, is there any discussion? I mean, there might not be.
Is there any further discussion?
I mean, I don't, we think we're talking about, we're not talking about whether we want to have this whether we want to have collective bargaining, we don't. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, did we follow policy when it comes to upholding the right of a teacher to decertify? That's the issue at hand. And it's not about whether we want it or not, because honestly, that's not our decision. That's not our decision. That's the teacher's decision, whether we have that or not. They have the ability to vote and to make that happen or not make it happen. That's, that's what, to me, that's what the issue is.
Well, I disagree with that, Matt. I feel that grievance was very well stated tonight. If we want to change the policy, then we should do so
but again,
according to what they said.
Right, but again, we're abridging somebody's right at that point.
Well, it's not in our policy.
Doesn't matter. If I mean, a right supersedes our policy.
Okay, well, you're entitled to your opinion,
right,
and I'm entitled to my opinion.
Sure.
I would like a point of information too, is that Mrs. Smell and I, NAT President, we do meet. We meet once a month, and we've had good ongoing conversation about the thoughts and wishes and what's going well and areas we need to grow in. We have a very good working relationship, and we talked even about this process. Visited. She asked me to give a presentation on what I would consider was the best practices of, informal negotiations. What were some best practices? She didn't ask me to present on how we used to do it, because Rebecca and I both agreed that we wanted an even better process. We didn't necessarily want to go back to what maybe was done 20 or 30 years ago. We might take some elements of that. We may take some elements of what's being done now and what would be some of those best practices. And so that's what I presented on at the NAT meeting. It was very good conversation and dialogue. Mrs. Allen wasn't there for most of my presentation, although I'm sure she probably saw a copy later. And there was a lot of good feedback. In fact, so much that the MSTA representative that was there that night took one of my slides to use, because he said, these are some good ideas of really working together collaboratively. And I want nothing more than to work with our teachers. I want to listen to our teachers. That has been very evident in our committee work, in my relationships with NAT and the leadership in NAT. I've met with the president last year on an ongoing basis, and this year we've started that as well. I'm invited to speak at NAC meetings from time to time, and I think that good proactive relationship is so very, very important. So I did want to add that.
And I don't disagree with you, Dr. Lorenz, but we need to put a policy in place that addresses this like they have suggested. If there's no further comment.
I would like to add something. Second line of the policy says the superintendent or designee is authorized to make additional rules governing the election process as needed. I think we'll all agree that the policy is silent to the word decertification. That said, since it's not or isn't silent, this would be in the realm of additional rules based on what the case was. At the absent of it actually being a union, everything was followed to the policy. How they are wanting to ask for representation, non-representation, getting the 30%, having it validated by that group does not require the other standing CBA group or union to be involved in that certification of those ballots or those petitions. And then the election process itself was going verbatim to what our policy says. We didn't modify the election policy to now incorporate, well, what do we do with this ballot? The existing union is going to be on that ballot. It's not just the non-representation group that's going to be on this ballot. It's automatic they're there, whether it was two other unions coming in at this time to be there. So even though the policy is silent, to me, we followed the idea of this policy to what would we do if this was a union or non-union. We would go down this step. Even if we modify this policy in 6 months, it's going to say the same thing. All it's going to do is add the word decertification. We didn't change the policy or how we would have operated the guise of this policy.
Well, I don't know how you can say that because we have to get legal counsel on that as to how we would change the terminology in it, because they brought up some valid points about the policies, and our policy does not state in there.
But okay, so we don't just use the term certification, but we still would follow this same, whatever that term is used, we would still follow the same policy. Get 30% of your vote for your petition, and to the point of the 70%, they're not going to go, if I'm running a petition to get signatures, and you see this in your local communities running for getting a governor or whatever the case is, they don't go and get 50% just because they only have to meet 30%. They stop once they hit 30%. So you can't, to me, we can't argue that, well, the other 70% are also in the other side of this channel. It's meet 30, you got 30%, and you press. You don't spend more time and effort to try to get to 50 to say, well, now I'm split 50-50. The idea is it comes down to the vote, and then the vote's going to tell you whether the other 70% are, or 60% or 40. That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call for a roll call vote.
Just to clarify, I is to uphold the administration, and then nay would be to.
That's right.
To not uphold
your
it.
motion is A on here.
Yep.
Okay. So, and that was a motion and a second.
Once again, state your motion.
So we're gonna pertain to the policy, I mean, the language that Dr. Wheeler referenced, that we're gonna uphold the findings of the administrative grievance, the level 3 grievance of the policy HH2. So we're gonna deny the, I'm moving that we deny the grievance. But that's the way we're doing that is by upholding the prior level grievance. Is that correct, Dr. Wheeler?
Yeah, I would suggest that you just read it as it's written.
The board pop.
It falling under A.
The board
or
is
make a motion to.
findings.
He does
Oh.
have.
Sorry.
You want to read that?
Oh, okay. I got it. So you want the whole language in there? Okay. So I'm going to rescind my prior motion and make a proper motion. I'm going to move that the board is upholding the finding, the board uphold the finding of the administrative level investigation and believes it is more likely than not that policy HH2 was implemented without violation. My apologies.
With that, I'll rescind my second.
And then I need a second for this.
And I'll second the new motion.
Okay, so, so, I'll wait till you sit down. We'll do a roll call vote. Matt?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Nay.
No.
No.
Aye.
So the board has voted to go, not go with, the motion that was put before us by Matt. So then B is the board is upholding the findings of the administrative level investigation and believes it's more likely than not that policy HH2 was violated and that the employees' representation election will be postponed until such time as the board readvises or adopts new policy language which adequately addresses the questions which were raised through the grievance. Is that right? Okay. So we need a second to that.
I don't think you need a motion on that. And that's,
That's the vote.
As a matter of clarification and just to mitigate any potential grievances that could come from the other side, I'd like to work with Dr. Lorenz, MSBA and legal counsel to try to get a policy in place as quickly as possible that would properly address some of the concerns that were brought up. And I think that's something that we could get turned around reasonably quickly. And in doing so, hopefully that will give us clear guidance for all employee groups, employees, and then also decrease or mitigate the opportunity for any legal ramifications that could come out of that. So we'll move quickly on that.
Thank you. At this time, the board is going to move into executive session.
I make a motion that we move into executive session pursuant to RSMO 610.0213, RSMO 610.02113, RSMO 610.0219, RSMO 610.0211, and I do believe that is all.
We'll take a 15-minute
Sorry,
break. Oh, second, okay. Roll call. Before we do that, we'll take a 15-minute break and reconvene in the library. We need a roll call vote. Aye. In the library.
Aye.
Aye. And the science room, I'm sorry.
Thank you for coming, Chad. Appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
Hey, done. You sign up.